And at 10, Ultimate. The Ultimate Universe is very similar to the normal 616 counterpart. However, there are some differences that certainly make this thing scarier than the main continuity. Captain America is anti-French for some reason. Ultimate Mr. Fantastic is a villain called the Maker. Ultimate Thanos is gold instead of purple. Oh yeah, and Ultimate Magneto is way too dark compared to Prime Magneto. Prime Magneto hates humans, but Ultimate Magneto is like a tyrant in that he considers all humans insects. Ultimate Wolverine is shown to be interested in teenage girls, while Earth 616 Wolverine is more honorable, because sure, okay, Earth 616 Cyclops and Wolverine didn't see eye to eye, but Wolverine would never have killed Cyclops just so that he could sleep with his girl. Yeah, and Wolverine wants to sleep with Jean Grey, a teenager, when Wolverine is in his 30s, at least in the Ultimate Universe. Oh, and there's also a romantic relationship between Wanda and Pietro, which is probably the scariest thing in this reality, on this Earth, and the reason I wanted it on this list. And at 9, Thanos wins. While the heroes of the MCU already received a little bit of a taste of a reality in which Thanos achieved his ultimate goal by erasing half the population of the universe in Avengers Infinity War, there exists a still darker universe where Thanos wins. Determined to finally impress death, Thanos eradicated every living being on planet Earth, including the superheroes and Frank Castle. The former Punisher made deals with both Mephisto and Galactus to find a new life of vengeance as the Cosmic Ghost Rider and stop King Thanos' dark reality from ever happening. As time went by though, the heroes of Earth grew old and weak, but Thanos only grew stronger, his eternal quest to please death leading him to kill almost every living thing in the known galaxy, and becoming the king of what remained in his wake. Nothing. I don't know why you'd want to be king of nothing. Seems pointless in my opinion, and I'm a king, so I feel like my expertise here, but whatever, okay, as long as it's not this universe, I'm fine with it. Oh, and not only that, but knowing that he had to die in order to be with death, King Thanos gave a piece of the time stone to his servant, the Rider, and tasked him with going back in time to drag his younger self to the future so that he could be killed by present Thanos. And at 8, Age of Ultron. Ultron 1320 comes from Earth 14622, and What If Age of Ultron number 1. An Earth where, thanks to Wasp dying, Ultron is able to take over the world faster. Ultron was created to be the ultimate AI by Hank Pym, to help the Avengers utilize their function better as a team. But with the untimely death of Pym's wife, Pym went on to create a more brutal version of Ultron, which was to replace the Avengers. But with this, Ultron's sentience began to constantly evolve. He started the eradication of the human race by taking out such threats as the Avengers and the Defenders, while he left Pym alive to watch him suffer. Ultron and his army of Ultron Sentinels then moved to Kola, Russia, so that he could bore himself into the planet's core to create the ultimate version of himself, Ultron 1320. Ultron then had his minions batter and beat Pym unconscious until he woke up to find that he himself had been turned into Ultron 1321. This version of Ultron also invaded other worlds, claiming Earth 62412, 23223, and 81223, but was stopped on Earth 45162. In its 7, Age of Apocalypse. Earth 295 is a reality that was accidentally created by Legion, son of X-Men leader Professor Charles Xavier and Israeli diplomat Gabriel Haller. Legion believed that the only way to bring peace to humans and mutants was to kill Magneto before he could incite the anti-mutant movement. He traveled back to a time when Xavier and Magneto both lived in Israel and were working at a hospital, taking the X-Men Storm, Iceman, Bishop, and Psylocke back with him. Legion tried to stab Magneto with a Psyblade, but Xavier shielded Magneto and was killed instead. By killing his own father, Legion then made his own existence impossible. The Macron Crystal resolved the paradox by restructuring reality. All the X-Men vanished from that reality, and a new reality came into existence. Bishop, already displaced in time, remained, but the Chrono Backlash fractured his mind. He wandered Earth for nearly 20 years, and then that superpowered fight attracted the attention of Apocalypse, who then basically took over and destroyed everything. And at 6, Old Man Logan. 50 years later, Logan lives with his wife Maureen and his son Scotty and daughter Jade on a plot of land in Sacramento. What used to be California, but is now part of Hulkland. He requires money to pay his rent to the landlords of his territory, the descendants of Bruce Banner, the Hulk Gang, who are a product of Just a whole lot of crap, okay? Just give me a minute. He refuses to sell his children's toys to pay for the rent, understandably, and Logan is shown as a broken old man refusing to fight anyone and trying to live peacefully. He realizes that he will be unable to pay the rent this month and that the Hulk gang will not accept a plea to pay double next month on its own. Oh, by the way, the Hulk gang is a inappropriately and unconsensually conceived group of children of the Hulk and She-Hulk, Bruce's cousin. Yeah, the Hulk gang arrives the next day to confront Logan on his lack of payment and then violently beat him, even though he was one of the most violent superheroes ever. Though Logan entertains visions of gutting the eldest Hulk brother Otis, he remains calm and just lets the beating happen. Later though, the Hulk gang kills his family, so Logan goes on to kill the whole Hulk gang, but it's still a messed up Earth, okay? It is. Halfway through into number 5, Earth X. The entire world has mutated due to the release of the Terrigen mists in the air. The now blind Watcher recruits Aaron Stack to be his eyes and inform him of what's going on Earth. X-51 finds that in this new world where everyone has superhuman abilities, a young man named the Skull is attempting to take over the world. And Captain America and a band of former champions of Earth have rallied together to stop him. But there's more going on here than meets the eye. It is learned that the Celestials have manipulated the people of Earth into being antibodies for a celestial embryo that is growing in the Earth's core. With humanity in a state of mutation that is not destined to happen for another 300 years, the Celestials come to cleanse the human race from the face of the Earth. Only the intervention of Reed Richards, Black Bolt, and Franklin Richards, who is now Galactus, stop the Celestials and destroys the thing growing at the center of the Earth. At the end of the battle, Galactus returns to space, and Reed has giant human torches built around the Earth to burn the Terrigen mists out of the air in an attempt to return humanity back to their former state. In at 4, Ruins. While Marvel was showcasing their best and brightest with Earth 616, Ruins takes a dark and twisted look at an alternate Marvel Earth where everything could have gone wrong, and it does, in the worst possible ways. The various scientific accidents and experiments that created Marvel's heroes went extremely wrong in the Ruins reality, alright? The Fantastic Four died on their test run in space, Bruce Banner was transformed into a living mass of tumors instead of the Hulk, and Peter Parker's spider bite left him with a terrifyingly infectious disease that ultimately ends up killing the narrator of the story in the truly darkest Marvel timeline. However, this is basically how the creators thought the world would be if the superheroes were real. It is in essence a combination of Earth 616 and our world, with the idea of what would happen realistically if this was our world being the founding thoughts for the Ruined storylines. And it's hella messed up, but I don't think that in this world Bruce would grow tumors, okay? I think he would just die. Probably from cancer, but still, okay, it's a more realistic version, but a much darker version of the realism. Getting close to the end in at number 3, Earth 666. First appearing in Secret Adventures number 33 from 2012, on Earth 666, everyone in the world is one of the undead, but this isn't Marvel Zombies. I was told not to talk about Marvel Zombies. The living were not endured on this world, nor do they welcome interdimensional police. The Orb of Necromancy was hidden by Brother Voodoo, who put it deep in Shumagorath's ego maze. In the center tower, where an undead celestial was located and who was their god, and with the orb, they planned to spread undeath to all of reality. And it's currently in a unique position, as its population is divided between a variety of subtypes of supernatural creatures. Vampires, werewolves, mummies, among others. The divide between the various groups is social and deeply rooted, with parts of the world being ruled by various factions. However, in this world there is some hope, as the greatest heroes of the various groups are united to protect the world as the Avengers of the Undead. Basically, if Marvel met Supernatural, especially that episode where like there was like the Chicago monster families and it was like a parody of the Mafia, that's what's going on. Especially because Captain America's shield is made of vibranium, not silver. Get it? Cause Cap's a werewolf this time? The alternative to the number 666 in some translations of the Bible is actually 616, the number used for Marvel's Prime Earth, so there you go. But ultimately, in at number 2, Hulk number 3. The world first explored in Hulk number 3 from 2021 is quite an interesting one. Here we meet another Bruce Banner who doesn't actually have a Hulk form. Instead, his Game of Bombs were a success, but the government then took them and then started using them against their enemies, which caused intense radiation that turns those affected into, as the military called them, bio-waste casualties, which in this reality are their own versions of Hulk and She-Hulk, horrifically disfigured for the most part. This Earth's version of Bruce ends up disposing of these Hulks by throwing them into the void, which even he doesn't know where it sends them. Although, if I'm being honest, this kind of reminds me of the Rick Potion number 9 episode of Rick and Morty season 1. You know, like the one where Morty wants to go to the dance with Jessica, but he ends up giving her like a love potion, but it's flu season, and then Rick tries to fix everyone by turning everyone into praying mantises, and then a combination of like a load of different DNAs that was supposed to equal human but doesn't. Yeah, that's kind of how I see these Hulks, but to not such an extreme where Bruce needs to like change worlds. And finally, into number 1, the Cancerverse. The Cancerverse is a reality where life finally defeated death, with eternal life being fueled by the many-angled ones. Every living being in this universe was corrupted and turned to their servitude, resulting in a universe-wide living corpse, which means that they aren't zombies, okay, since zombies are undead and nobody in this earth can die. Before the death of Captain Marvel, with no cure or anything to save him, his terminal condition caused such distress among the people who adored him. Across the universe, all the empathetic trauma was sensed by the many-angled ones. They reached out to the dying Marvel to give them one simple truth: even death may die. While Avengers, Defenders, X-Men, Fantastic Four, and other heroes were present for a vigil at his deathbed at this point, Marvel transmuted his closest allies, among them the Avengers, now the Revengers. Despite the opposition of many, including seemingly at least members of the Machine Resistance, the corrupted heroes performed a ritual known as necropsy, sacrificing the avatar of death on the spacecraft sanctuary and consequently annihilating death itself. Yeah.
Number 10, Future State. In the Future State reality, we saw the DC universe get pretty bleak. This was a world where Bruce Wayne's Batman was initially presumed dead, while Gotham had become a police state city, where all masks, heroes, and villains were outlawed, where the Justice League was only really a team of co-workers, no longer a group of close friends, never mind a family, where the Flash family was shattered, and where the Teen Titans Academy was destroyed, and the world became an apocalyptic wasteland thanks to the threat of the Four Horsemen. In all its bleakness, there were some bright moments and spots, but it seemed the farther into this future that we went, the darker things got. What makes a future scary? What superheroes do you think have the worst luck with awful and terrifying futures? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. Number 9, Last Night on Earth. Last Night on Earth is a bizarre and wonderful story that features a post-apocalyptic wasteland where Batman, or a clone version of Bruce Wayne, wanders Gotham, laid to waste by nuclear warfare thanks to a mysterious villain known only as Omega. This version of Batman is also joined on his journey by none other than his longtime nemesis, the Joker, who is reduced to being a head in a jar, having previously been dismembered by Alfred himself. Joker and Batman go on all sorts of weird adventures, including one where they fight against giant-sized babies, which were actually light constructs created by those who now had taken and wielded the Green Lantern's rings, but who obviously, weren't really chosen to do so. I mean, I feel like if you're making giant babies to fight someone, it probably shouldn't have been a Green Lantern. In my mind. I mean, I guess it's creative. Gotta give them that. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving what we do here at Top 10 Nerd, please check out our newest channel, Most Amazing Top 10 Anime. Number 8, Age of Apocalypse. What would the world be like if Apocalypse succeeded in conquering it? Well, as you may have expected, it would not be great. While Apocalypse, currently in the comics, is not seeking to dominate and rule the world, but is actually focusing on his family, currently kind of in retirement, we should maybe just be grateful for that. Even though, honestly, right now, I think the mutants could actually use his help. Back in the days when Apocalypse was known as one of the most terrifying mutant villains around, we got to explore and imagine a world known as Age of Apocalypse. This alternate Earth, known as Earth 295, is one where Professor Charles Xavier was accidentally killed by his own time-traveling son, Legion, which resulted in a divergence from the main timeline. Because Charles wasn't around to form his own X-Men team when Apocalypse came, the world fell. Here, Magneto instead leads his own mutant team, acting as one of the last to stand against Apocalypse. But unfortunately, it's not enough to save this reality from being a horrifying terror show, where many of our favorite heroes end up pulled over to Apocalypse's side of the conflict. Number 7, Earth 3. Earth 3 is the reality that belongs to the Reverse Justice League. Not the Bizarro version, but the Crime Syndicate. They are basically an evil version of the Justice League we know and love from the main continuity. But instead of being a one-for-one of every character on the team, each member actually has their own more evil counterpart. Not necessarily being an alternate version of them, but in some cases they are. Wonder Woman is replaced by Lois Lane as a manipulative and evil superwoman. Batman is replaced by his older alternate sibling, sibling Thomas Jr., who killed both his parents and the younger Bruce, as Owlman, and Kal-El, I think we still say it Kal-El, is the last vengeful son of Krypton known as Ultraman, but his Kal-El is spelt with just 2 L's instead of E-L. And that's only some of the impressively villainous roster who basically all rule Earth, using fear to motivate the people to do as they say, at least in the original crime syndicate. It's different people now. Not all of them are still there. Times change, and when you're evil, people are gonna usurp you and you'll probably end up dying at some point. That's just how it goes. Number 6. Days of Future Past. Days of Future Past is a mutant-based horror future where all mutants basically end up persecuted and held in camps where they're marked with M tattoos and forced to live out their days. This was a future reality that was avoided in terms of it becoming the main reality future when Rachel Summers in the comics sends Wolverine back in time to stop it from happening. Rachel herself happens to be from a version of the Days of Future Past reality, the main one known as Earth 811, of which now there are actually more than one version of that even alternate reality, just to really confuse you. An alternate version of the Days of Future Past reality, known as Earth 1191, is also the one that Lucas Bishop hails from, where Layla Miller also gets captured and marked with her own M tattoo, which she still has over her eye to this day, from her journey there with Jamie Madrox, during the X-Men Second Coming crossover event. Number 5. Ultron 1. What if Ultron 1 is an episode in the animated What If series, where we got to reimagine what the world could have been like in the cinematic universe if Ultron had actually won his fight against the Avengers, merging with the body that would become Vision and pretty much decimating all life on Earth and beyond. Only a few survivors remain, and even they struggle to survive and save the day. The other question becomes, who exactly are they even saving the day for? Most of humanity at this point is pretty much gone. It's an awful future where even the Guardians of the Multiverse, later assembled, even struggle to actually straight up defeat Ultron, instead having to be satisfied with merely containing him. Which, I mean, good enough for now, but who knows, that Ultron could just be like busting out and come in and be like, hey, I'm back. I feel like that's gonna happen at some point. And if it doesn't, I'll be a little disappointed, to be honest. Number 4. Deceased. Deceased is DC's apocalyptic zombie-like world, but where instead of it being specifically a zombie outbreak, it's more of an outbreak of the anti-life equation. The anti-life equation affects all the heroes and villains it infects by causing them to basically lose control and be filled with rage. This is the reality where an anti-life infected Wonder Woman goes on a rampage and literally tears Vandal Savage in half. This is also the same reality where the tragic story of Batman and Alfred is actually reversed compared to the main continuity. Instead of Bruce outliving his father figure and his trusted butler Alfred, Alfred is actually the one who survives him. Also, Alfred is a badass in this reality. Alfred is a badass in all realities though, so facts. Number 3. Earth Z. Sometimes referred to as Earth Z, Earth 2149 is the reality where a zombified sentry first caused an outbreak to happen. The outbreak would not only threaten the general public of this whole universe, but also go on to infect many superpowered beings as well, both heroes and villains, and it would also kind of spill into other universes too. It's widely considered to be one of the darkest realities in all of comics. This is a reality where Black Panther, T'Challa, is slowly devoured by his former colleagues and friends. Freaks me out every time. Every time I think about it, I'm like, no! Where Spider-Man ends up eating both his dear Aunt May and beloved MJ. It's a really messed up and bleak reality, basically, and every time I go back to it, I'm almost immediately forced to recoil back from these issues and this world. That's just how gruesome it is. It's really intense. Number 2. Ruins. Oof. I cannot believe this one is not at the top of this list. Honestly though, it was a hard decision to make when it came down to these last few. Some might not think of Marvel's Ruins as a future as it is set in modern day sort of, but it's still an alternate reality that never came to pass in the main continuity based on the original world of Marvel, which actually, you know, started technically back in the 60s, although that's kind of weird. So I think we can still consider Ruins like taking a glimpse through a dark crystal ball into an impossibly cruel potential future for our heroes and our villains. In this reality, superpowers are interpreted more literally, meaning that they are less blessings than curses that cause people great harm, with them becoming more monsters, prisoners, victims, or just like straight up villains than actual altruistic heroes most days. Number 1. Batman in Bethlehem. Batman in Bethlehem has to be one of the worst futures out there, but that is also part of what makes it so compelling and so interesting. In this reality, Damian Wayne takes up the cape and cowl, following in his father's footsteps, but after the death of Nightwing, who actually went on to become Batman before Damian did. Damian decides the best way to approach being Batman because of Nightwing's death is by doing things kind of his own way. In other words, he no longer holds himself back from killing. And more than that, in this reality, Damian also makes a deal with the devil to basically protect Gotham no matter what, offering his soul in exchange for immortality and superior healing powers, which allows him to act as Gotham's vengeance pretty much forever. Or at least for as long as, Gotham lasts. Eventually, Gotham ends up confronting a zombie-like outbreak when most of its citizens become infected with Joker venom and the monster serum. Gotham would then end up quarantined before being nuked, wiping it off the face of the map, with Damian surviving the strike due to his immortality and healing factor that he had bargained for. Number 10. Earth 90213. There are tons of scary alternate universes for Peter, which isn't surprising given all the trauma he's already been through in the main continuity of Earth 616, and how frequently it seems things could have gone even more wrong or sideways in his life. In the reality of Earth 90213 from the comic What If Spider-Man Back in Black, we get to see just how much worse things could have gotten for Peter if Aunt May wasn't accidentally targeted by Kingpin's hitmen, but instead Mary Jane stepped into their crosshairs. However, unlike May, MJ doesn't end up in critical care, she just straight up dies. This sets Peter down a path of darkness, where instead of just badly beating and terrifying Kingpin while May's life is on the line, Spider-Man is actually focused on killing him. Aunt May tries to beg Peter to think about what Mary Jane would have wanted and not to pursue the man responsible, but he is blinded by rage. In the end, he succeeds in killing Kingpin and is arrested by Iron Man and the authorities and taken to prison. For his part, Peter blames the whole thing on Iron Man, who in this reality he's still unmasked for, in order to show solidarity for Iron Man's Superhero Registration Act. Number 9. My Little Thanos. This feels like a weird one to have on this list, but I think it is both terrifying and adorable, which is a unique combination of descriptors for a story, so I thought I would share it with you. Also, I just really like it. My Little Thanos is another tale likely from an alternate timeline featured in the Thanos Annual from 2018. Back on part 1, Connor talked about the Thanos wins reality from the second arc of the main story of that comic, and on my part 2, I talked about another alternate timeline story from this annual. The annual is a really fun read and a good standalone collection of just short Thanos tales outside of continuity, so whether or not you pick up the main series, I would really recommend reading this issue at least. Just read the annual, even if you don't want to read the whole series. It's great, it's fantastic. In My Little Thanos, Thanos visits an adorable world of cute little beings known as the Adorals. Noticing how bright their world shines, he attempts to get whatever source of power they have that causes such an effect. You know Thanos, he's all about power. The Adorals in general are just enthusiastic about everything, including being subjugated by their new god Thanos. They happily murder themselves and one another at his behest, and get him the artifact that they worship. It turns out it's just a heart that makes a squeaky sound when you squeeze it. It's a very disturbing but delightful world. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and you want to learn about even more scary alternate Marvel universes, I'm pretty sure we could just keep going forever. There's a lot of them. So be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. Number 8. Limbo. Limbo is the dimension and reality where Magic, aka Illyana Rasputin, was held as a prisoner when she was young. She was kidnapped by the evil Belasco, who sought to use her to harness her power and also to turn her into a sort of protege for his own dastardly means. In the end, Magic ended up escaping her captor and even rising up against him and taking Limbo for herself, defeating Belasco. While Magic has her own dark side, known as Darkchild, it is because of her alignment as a hero that I am ranking Limbo a little lower than I might otherwise. Magic, you see, tends to rule over Limbo, and she's pretty inherently good overall. Still, Limbo is basically a hell dimension on its own, so it's still a pretty scary alternate reality to visit. Unless you have Magic with you and on your side. And even then, I imagine it would still be like a little bit scary, a little bit traumatizing, at least. Just cause like demons and such. Number 7. Earth 21619. The Earth of 21619 takes the idea of Peter becoming a killer of villains even farther. In the Back in Black What If, Peter feels as though he is somewhat justified as Kingpin was the one who took Mary Jane from him. He was pushed to the breaking point by her death, basically. However, on the Earth of 21619, which is the reality number given to the universe that we see in the Chip Zdarsky and Phil Noto series, Spider-Man, Spider Shadow, it is Spider-Man's union with Venom that brings out a darkness within him, and sets him on a path where he is killing multiple villains, taking a new approach to crime fighting as he falls deeper and deeper into the darkness that the symbiote unleashes from within. What happens with Peter also inevitably leads to another hero taking on and bonding with the symbiote later in the miniseries, and also having to face even more deadly consequences as a result of that bond. Number 6. Earth 70134. In this reality, things went down a little differently when it comes to the Spider-Man story known as The Other. Instead of embracing and accepting the spider totem within, Peter decides to reject it. Peter would rather not be resurrected than return more spider than man here. However, the spider totem wasn't the only one hoping to forge a special and permanent connection with Peter. Out in the world, Venom senses that Peter is in his cocoon and now vulnerable with the spider totem rejected and dead. The symbiote leaves its current host, Matt Gargan, in hopes of bonding with Peter, and guess what? It's successful. What is born from the union is a monster who calls themselves Poison. No longer is Spider-Man alive. Instead, we have Poison in his place. Poison attempts to get Mary Jane to agree to be its partner and kind of its bride, but when she refuses the offer, they decide to dig up Gwen's corpse instead. Spooky stuff. Number 5. Dark Dimension. The Dark Dimension is on a whole other scale when it comes to dark, dangerous, and straight up scary alternate worlds. It is the home of the Dreadlord Dormammu, a notorious Doctor Strange villain. The other horrifying thing about this reality is that Dormammu, while residing there, becomes insanely powerful, as this is basically what fuels his own abilities, his magics, and his powers. So he is at his most powerful while in the Dark Dimension, which is also why he's probably the ruler of it, and probably also why you definitely don't want to go there if Dormammu is there. The Dark Dimension is filled with hellish landscapes, but also mind-melting, trippy ones as well. So it's not just a physical hellish reality, it's also a sort of mental and metaphysical one too. Number 4. Earth 14850. This is the reality belonging to the What If story Wolverine, Enemy of the State. In this version of the well-known Wolverine tale, Logan finds himself brainwashed by Weapon X, but as opposed to becoming free of their control, as happens in 616, he is unable to be saved. His friends and fellow heroes attempt to band together to stop Wolverine by neutralizing him and saving him instead of killing him. In the end, however, this just results in many of their own painful deaths. In the end, it is up to his good friend and student, Kitty Pryde, to save Wolverine, but of course by killing him, as that's really the only way left to deal with Wolverine at this point. In the process, Kitty loses her arm and is only able to save him by phasing her hand through his head and then making it solid while passing through Wolverine's brain. Number 3. Earth 811. Days of Future Past, all in all, is pretty hellish, and it's not even a hell dimension. In the reality of 811, we get to see what would happen if the Sentinels actually succeeded in conquering North America. Not only do they pretty much wipe out almost all mutants and superpowered beings, but the Sentinels also end up enslaving all of humanity for their own good, as they see it. The Sentinels decide who gets to breed and who doesn't, marking all citizens with lettered tattoos to denote if they are human, mutant, or basically are humans with like mutant potential. Mutants are kept in camps to serve the Sentinels, and even worse, the Sentinels seem to be planning to take over the entire world, which would inevitably start a nuclear war that would destroy the planet. Number 2. Hell. Technically, Hell is its own reality here in the Marvel Multiverse. It is often the name given to Mephisto's reality or realm, who is seen kinda like the Marvel Universe's devil. He claims to be their version of Satan, at least, although a few other powerful demons and entities have also attempted to claim that title as well, including Damon Hellstrom's father and Azazel, Nightcrawler's dad. Mephisto's realm is actually made up of various hellish realms and death dimensions. It typically is shown to look like a fiery, hot, or cavernous style landscape. What you typically think of when you think of the traditional, stereotypical hell of Western Christianity. Number 1. What if Doctor Strange lost his heart instead of his hands? What if Doctor Strange lost his heart instead of his hands is the title of the 4th episode of Season 1 of Disney Plus's streaming animated series What If. Possibly one of the darkest episodes of all, allows us to see what would happen were Doctor Strange to have lost his love Christine instead of his hands. In this case, Doctor Strange chooses not to let go of the possibility that he might get Christine back, despite the fact that the Ancient One appears and tells him that Christine's death is actually part of an absolute point in time, which basically can't be altered without risking, well, the fate of the universe. Strange changes his own history, going down a dark path to try and find a way to get enough power to bring Christine back. Finally able to do so, just as the Ancient One warned, this does cause the destruction of the very universe that this Strange hails from. Number 10. Earth 64211. This reality reality is quite dark and quite scary, especially for Black Bolt. Here, Maximus, Black Bolt's brother, devised a plan to steal the throne of Attilan and of the Inhumans by disguising himself as his brother. When this plan appeared to be destined to fail due to memory detectors installed around the palace in preparation, he made the Inhuman Telegar make it so that he not only looked identical to Black Bolt, but also had his distinct superpowered vocal cords and his memories as well, erasing Maximus's. Still, Maximus was not trained to hold back his voice, and the pain of the procedure caused him to cry out, exposing his treachery and causing him to be banished from Attilan to THANOS. However, Maximus gave himself Black Bolt's memories, and therefore he didn't actually remember his role in this plot, leaving him to ponder upon this revelation if he was indeed Maximus turned into Black Bolt, or simply Black Bolt and Maximus had actually succeeded in usurping him. He couldn't remember who he was anymore. Number 9. That time Thanos helped an old lady cross the street. This alternate reality seems to be unnumbered, but exists based off the story that Cosmic Ghost Rider tells us in the Thanos 2016 annual. Connor diving into Thanos Wins on the part 1 of this list made me remember how much I love that comic, but especially the annual, which features multiple stories which are all, or at least appear to be, set in alternate worlds. In one such story, Thanos helps a little old lady cross the street, seemingly at first out of the kindness of his heart. I know, shocking, right? Well, of course it turns out that even this act is quite sinister, and that Thanos really did it only to delay a bus from stopping, thereby preventing Stephanie Kircher from bumping into and meeting Suzanne. This meeting would set Stephanie on a path which would turn her into Earth's savior, allowing her to end world hunger, cure disease, and dismantle inequality. Thanos even visits Stephanie on her deathbed to give her a vision of what could have been of the life she missed out on because he delayed her bus, stopping by a few moments, preventing her from bumping into Suzanne. Pretty evil stuff, right? And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and you want to learn about even more scary alternate Earths from Marvel, there are tons of those, so be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. Number 8. Earth 51412. One of the freakiest realities that I could think of visiting would be the one that belongs to Patton Parnell. Patton Parnell is probably one of the most disturbing Spider-Man alternates around, who literally turned into a sadistic man-spider-like monster when he got his powers. Well, he was actually probably always sadistic and sociopathic to some extent, but getting spider-like powers, which also turned him into a humanoid spider-like creature, probably didn't help the guy. Number 7. Earth 11080. Also known as the Last Gun on Earth reality. Here, Punisher once more faces off against the Marvel Universe. But instead of it just being a comic book trope this time around, Frank is actually not just out for vengeance, but seeks to save the world by facing off against many famous Marvel heroes and villains. This is because on this alternate Earth a virus was released that caused those infected to become violent and cannibalistic. Here Spider-Man ends up patient zero after devouring the villain Rhino live on national television. And well, I think you can imagine how dark it gets from there. It just gets darker and darker and darker. You're like, wow, it's like pitch black in this universe. I cannot see. Someone turn on a light in here. Number 6. Earth 18138. Another scary alternate reality tied to Thanos, as some are known to be. I mean, Thanos is a pretty scary dude. Actually came about because a hero was trying to redeem the villain and raise Thanos instead to be a hero. The hero who attempted this, however, wasn't really great at doing so, and instead made the future worse as a result. This hero was Frank Castle alternate Cosmic Ghost Rider. The thing with Cosmic Ghost Rider is that he only became Ghost Rider as a final gambit to try and save the universe. This was after Frank was killed when Thanos attacked the Earth. By the time Frank had made his deal to become a spirit of vengeance and returned as Ghost Rider, it was pretty much too late. He spent an eternity alone and was driven pretty crazy by the solitude. He went on to get the power Cosmic, became a Herald of Galactus, and when he still failed to stop Thanos, joined him instead. After that, history was wiped from existence, in which Thanos won. Cosmic Ghost Rider ended up in Valhalla for a while before realizing he wasn't really happy there, it wasn't really his thing, and being permitted by Odin to leave in order to travel back in time and try and kill Thanos to prevent a future like the one he was from ever becoming possible. Cosmic Ghost Rider couldn't bring himself to kill the then innocent baby Thanos though, and instead went on adventures with him, trying to teach him to be good. But it turns out Frank Castle wasn't necessarily an expert on the subject of heroism and goodness himself. This version of Thanos grows up instead to become a dictator, removing freedom of choice from those he rules, making them be good and banishing those who refuse to submit and obey him. That's like too much goodness. You shouldn't be trying to make people be good. Just kind of gotta let them do their own thing, otherwise then you're kind of evil, kind of defeats the whole point. Thanos. Number 5. What if Ultron won? While the What If comic book series sometimes takes us to weird and hilarious alternate realities, this time around the Disney Plus and Marvel animated series took us to one of the most depressing realities yet. In episode 8 of the series, we get to see into a reality where Ultron won the day. In fact, he won all of the days to come. Black Widow and Hawkeye are the only remaining survivors, it seems, who are attempting to fight back against Ultron and stop him, once and for all, at any cost. However, in the end, Ultron finds a way to break free of his fate at being defeated, using his own power and the Infinity Stones to escape his own reality and threaten the existence of all lives across the multiverse. Is there anything scarier than this? I don't think so. Number 4. Life 9 of Moira X. During the relaunch of the X-Men books, the mutants were given a refresh when it came to their history and when it came to making sense of seemingly all the almost separate lives that they've kind of lived, all the different eras of X-Men. Moira McTaggart was revealed to be a mutant codenamed Moira X, whose power was reincarnation, with her dying and being reborn from her mother's womb once more, but with the knowledge of all the previous lives she had lived prior to that one. Moira's 9th life, the timeline that precedes 616 from her perspective, saw Moira join with Apocalypse in order to try to find a way to protect the mutants against the inevitable, man who create machines, Sentinels, to destroy them, and in so doing often end up destroying humanity as well. Despite uniting with the powerful mutant Apocalypse in this reality, technology once more ended up being the end of both humanity and mutant kind, with this reality's destruction being linked back to the existence of Nimrod. In order to prevent this dystopian and apocalyptic reality from coming to pass, Moira ends up getting information on how Nimrod was created and allows herself to be killed and reborn with said information so that she might be able to prevent Nimrod from coming online in her next life. And, you know, make the next reality not so awful in the end. Of course, Nimrod has come online, so I'm pretty sure we're all doomed. But anyways. Number 3. Earth 21129. Yikes! Is this one scary? Also coming to us from another glimpse into the Darkhold during the Darkhold event. In this reality, we see a darker potential future for Tony Stark, as he works to create his Iron Man suit. In Darkhold Iron Man, Stark creates the suit with the help of his own team of employees and friends, only to discover that removing it also removes his skin with said pieces of armor. Forced to stay within the suit for his own safety, Tony Stark, with help from Pepper Potts, worked tirelessly to find a way to fix this small but very disturbing glitch. In the end, Stark ends up believing that the suit is superior and, as like with the Cybermen of Doctor Who, believes that everyone on Earth should merge with the suit, giving up their more squishy human form in favor of the armor, which is better at protecting them, despite the fact that the suits kinda slowly break down your biological form and fully merge with those who wear them. Disturbing, I know. And then in the end they're like, everyone gets an Iron Man suit. Don't worry, just get in the Iron Man suit. Nothing bad will happen. Number 2. Zombieverse. I wish I could do a list like this without talking about the Marvel Zombieverse, sometimes referred to as Earth Z, but I don't think I can. Also, Connor did his best to stay away from Marvel Zombies on part 1, which means it kind of falls to me to talk about it, because I don't think we can really do a Scariest alternate Marvel Universes series without at least mentioning Marvel Zombies. And then of course the thing with that is, if we mention it, the trauma that I have experienced personally from reading the series set in this universe means that I have to boost it up on our list. Yeah, Marvel Zombies has left emotional scars on me, okay? It's stuck with me. Every time I come back to it, I'm like reliving the horror again. Mainly, what still haunts me to this day is the time that zombie Ant-Man captured human Black Panther and kept him alive so that he could saw off pieces of T'Challa to feed on, keeping his former friend as his own little secret snack. Very, very disturbing. I'm sure that'll never come up again, I hope. Number 1. What if? Zombies. This other alternate zombie reality comes to us from the Marvel and Disney Plus animated show, What If? In this series we get glimpses into alternate Marvel cinematic realities via the Watcher, who pretty much sees all. Each episode features a standalone story, but these episodes also come together in the end of this first season, as the threads from each story kind of end up connecting when the Watcher creates the Guardians of the Multiverse team to help to defend the various realities against Ultron, who we talked about earlier on. The reason that I put this zombie universe above the comic book one is because despite the small shimmer of hope we get in this episode and in this reality, a lot of heroes still die, and in some cases quite gruesomely. And we know it's not over yet because we're getting a whole Marvel Zombies animated series. Oh boy, I can't wait. Good news is that writer Zeb Wells appears to be the mastermind behind that show, and I love Zeb Wells' writing, so I'm sure I will actually enjoy it. But the bad news is we still got Black Panther sliced up, but this time to feed a crazy powerful zombified version of Scarlet Witch. Double yikes. Double trauma for Amanda. Why? I was like, they're probably not gonna do that in this episode, and then they did it, and I was like, why? Why did we do this? I can't, I really don't like that part. I don't like it. Oh well, it's over now. Black Panther got away. It's fine. He's fine. Nothing bad will happen, I'm sure, and the world will be saved by our heroes. I'm sure.